Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Teresa's Kitchen. This morning, I will be making a country style breakfast. This morning, I'm going to be making some grits, ham, and eggs. Yes, grits, ham, and eggs. So, this morning, I have this bag of grits. You guys can basically follow the directions. Let me show you. You can basically follow the directions on the bag. The bag says Quaker grits and it gives you like 5 minutes to cook for quick grits. But for me, I think grits just needs to take a little bit longer to cook. You can go by the directions. If you want to cook it in 5 minutes, your choice if you like to have gritty grits. But for me, I have to cook it at least a good 15-20 minutes for the grits to be nice and smooth. And so right now I have my pot of water that's on. And once the water get hot enough for me to where it begins to boil and roll, I will be adding some salt to it. After I put the grits on, then I have my ham steak. Yes, and it's a nice piece of steak that I'm gonna put on top of the stove, and I'm gonna let it steam just a little bit, and then it's gonna pan fry. And also I will be making some scrambled eggs. So that's what we're gonna be having for breakfast this morning. And welcome back and happy Sunday. So while we're waiting for the water to boil, let's have the great grits debate. I live here in the South. In the South, I know most of us like to have our grits cooked with just water and salt and a little black pepper. And I know that up north, most of them probably like to put sugar in their grits. So if you're one of those northerns that like to put sugar in your grits, feel free. But then if you are one of the southerners and you like to put salt and black pepper, hey, you're on my team. But with that being said, also when some people are cooking grits, they also like to put milk in it and they say it's much creamier. But in this case, I just feel that you don't need milk. I just think you need a little time for the grits to cook and for it to get nice and smooth and creamy. And that's what we're going to be doing this morning is ensuring that the grits is nice and creamy. So the water haven't exactly begun to boil, but I can hear it's getting hot, hot, hot because I can hear the steam beginning to come up. And once it begins to roll the water from boiling, and that's when you're going to go ahead and put in your cup or your cup and a half of grits, depending on family size, whatever directions you want to go as far as your grits. You can go ahead and follow the directions here. But like I said, I'm just going to be cooking the grits. I don't measure. But the key is when you're cooking grits, you have to just constantly stir the grits. And when you begin to see it lumping up, like getting lumps, you just take your spoon and you just smooth those lumps out and just continue to let it cook. And if you had to add more water to it, and that's what you do, it's best to add a little bit at a time if you put too much grits in the pot. So that's how we're going to be cooking our grits this morning. Okay, so now the water is beginning to like really begin to get really hot, hot, hot. And you can begin to go ahead and put your grits inside of it. And to my pot of water, I have at least probably about 6 cups of water. I'm gonna put at least a cup and a half of grits to it. But before I do that, I'm gonna add at least a dash of salt. You need that salt for flavor. So again, I measure it out, put it in my hand, and there's my dash of salt. Gotta have some flavor. So to my pot, I'm gonna go ahead and add the grits. And I'm also gonna stir it in because of course when you're stirring in grits, it's going to be clumping up, so you wanna make sure that it's smooth. So that's 1 cup. Oh, here's like a half a cup of grits. So I'm gonna stir all that in. And you need to have the stove at least at medium heat. And you can cover it. and let it cook. You will hear the grits begin to pop. So when you hear the grits popping, you just go in like it's popping now. I hear the grits popping now. I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna continue to stir the grits. And I'm just gonna do that because it's popping, that means it's cooking. So what you need to do is just constantly check on the grits. Once you see it begin to get really thick, you can begin to add water. Basically, I like thick grits. I don't like watery grits. So if you don't like watery grits, just try not to add too much water. If you do, you might can just eliminate some of the water and just let it begin to thicken on its own. But what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna lower it a little bit more because now I've already gotten it to where I wanted it to boil. And then I'm just gonna consistently stir the grits. And the grits is gonna pretty much thicken up on its own. And I'm just gonna cover it and I'm gonna keep an eye on it. The next thing, I have a pan on. I'm letting it get hot because I will be adding some oil to the pan because again, I'll be making my steak, ham steak. And this is what I'm gonna cook the whole steak. But before I do that, I'm just gonna add a little bit of water to the bottom of the pan so it can steam a little bit. And then after it begins to steam and the water kind of like disappear, I'm gonna go ahead and just add a little bit of oil because that's gonna help take out some of that salt. That would be the reason why you would add a little bit of water. And so again, I hear my grits is popping away. What I will suggest to you, because it's popping, just move it away from the heat. And that way it will stop popping. And then you just stir once again. Right now, the grits is nice and smooth. I'm gonna let you guys see so far. The recipe does call to cook for about 5 minutes. I am going to let this baby just cook. So by the time I'm done making the ham and making some eggs to go with it, it's gonna be really nice and creamy at the rate that I want it. Right now, it's not creamy. Trust me, it's going to be gritty if you follow the 5-minute quick grits. So if you don't want any gritty grits, take the time out and let it just cook. And if you want to, you can turn the pot down even lower. So that's where we're at the moment for cooking some grits. So as always, I'm gonna go ahead and take the ham out of the packet and I'm gonna wash it before I actually cook it. Wash some of that probably saltiness off of it, because we all know that ham has salt. So I'm gonna just take it out of the packet as soon as I figure out how to take it out of the packet. All right, so this is not that easy slide open, so I'm gonna get a knife. And I'm just going to open it up. So here I go. So vacuum packed ham. Take it out of the packet. Make sure you have whatever you're going to cook your ham in nearby. Some people like to keep the juice, but for me, it might be a little bit salty. I'm just gonna run it under some cold water. And then I'm gonna just place it in the pan like this. I'll just add maybe like a little quarter cup of water. You see how I added the water to the pan? And then I'm going to just let it simply cook on top of the stove. So I have the ham on top of the stove. It's on medium heat. I'm just going to simply cover it and I'm just going to let it steam for about a few minutes. After I allow it to steam, I'm going to drain the water off. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and let it pan fry and let it brown on each side. And then I'm going to go ahead and check on my grits right now. I'm going to stir them once again. Here's my pot of grits. So it is beginning to thicken up. You see, that's the consistency that I like. But I will still continue to allow it to cook some more. I'm going to turn the pot down on low and just let it simmer. And it probably may thicken up a little bit more. But if it's too thick, you just add a little bit of water at a time, so it won't be that thick or overly thick. So I'm going to turn the stove down, and then I'm going to continue. So I've been checking on the grits, and it's still nice and creamy right here. So if it's too thick for you, you can add water to it. And here's my grits right here. I may just add just a little bit more water because it might just be a little bit too thick, but it's okay for now. Like I said, I'm going to let it continue to cook while my ham is cooking, and while my eggs is cooking. And so right before I serve it, I'll make the decision if I want to add a little bit of water to it, so therefore it can thin out just a little bit to my likings. Now, I do have it on low, and it's going to be cooking still even on low. So I covered up my ham that I started cooking. As you can see the steam from the pan. The ham is boiling right now. It's steaming. And some of this fat can come off. I'm just going to, really don't need to flip it because I mean all I wanted to do is steam. So I'm just going to let it just steam for about 1 more minute. Make sure all that salt is kind of like going away. That would be the purpose of using it. Or another good idea is that people tend to use Coca-Cola because what it does is also help get rid of the saltiness, and it also get it to be sweet, and it can create a glaze to it. So in this case, I'm just gonna allow it to go ahead and just steam 1 more minute, and from there I'll go ahead and drain the water off, and I'll let it pan fry on top of the stove. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scramble these 3 eggs that I cracked open. Scrambling is where you get your fork and you go around and you're beating the eggs, and you're going to make sure that the clear fluid from the egg is that you don't no longer see it clear. You're going to do it nice and gentle. You're going to make sure all of the egg is blended well. It's only going to take a few minutes, not even a minute, just a couple of seconds to do this. And you're whisking around. You're like folding it around and around and around. And here's your egg mixture. I hope you guys can see it. So I hear my ham pan sizzling over here, so I'm just going to go actually take it off. And I'm going to drain the water off. So now I have the ham, and now it's basically going to steam until it begins to fry for a few minutes. It's just going to let all that extra water evaporate that wasn't able to evaporate, and it's going to begin to cook. So what I'm going to do is simply put just like a little cap full of oil in it. And the reason why it's going to fry on its own because it too still has some of the fat from the pan. From the ham around the sides there. So I'm going to just put like a cap full of oil. And it's going to get hot, so real fast. I'm not going to turn it up on high. I'm just going to let it just cook for a moment. While you're waiting to cook your eggs, I got the pan, getting the pan getting hot. I have the ham over there frying. Also continue to keep an eye on your grits because again, it can still thicken. How are you going to keep an eye on it? By constantly stirring your grits. And if it's still thickened up to the consistency you want it to be, then that's great. If it's too thick, go ahead and just add a little bit of water to it. So I'm going to let the grits continue to cook while I'm waiting for the rest of the food to get done. Remember, on the bag it say 5 minutes. That's not true. So I'm just going to put the lid on it and let it continue to cook. And so we can hear the ham, it's sizzling over there. So if you want to go ahead and turn it, you can turn it, but I think I just may wait a few minutes before I actually turn it because I wanted to get it just a little tad brown on one side. And then I'll flip it back over. So I have my pan over here getting hot for the eggs. I hear my ham is over here sizzling. I'm gonna turn it. You see how the ham is getting brown? I'm just gonna take like a tablespoon and a half of butter or margarine, whatever you have, and you're going to put it inside of your frying pan for your eggs. And once that's hot enough, you can go ahead and pour your eggs inside of the pan. Everything's coming together. I'm just going to flip it back over just a little bit. I turned it down somewhat because I don't want it to start cooking really fast and it begins to dry out. So once my butter has melted in the pan, I'm going to go ahead and add my eggs to it. And once I add my eggs, I'm just going to consistently scrape the pan, because that's how you're going to make your scrambled eggs. If you want to put salt and black pepper or whatever seasoning you may want to put inside your eggs, then now is the time before you actually start to cook the eggs. So I'm just going to give it a nice little whip before I actually put it in the pan. And this is what the eggs look like before I actually put them in the pan. And again, I have some melted butter going on in the pan. So I'm pouring the eggs into the pan. So this is what the eggs look like once pouring them into the pan. So all you need to do is take your fork or your spatula, whatever you're using, just to begin to scrape it. As you can see, like this side is beginning to like turn a different color, meaning it's cooking around the edges. And you're just gonna scrape. Let it cook a little bit more before you continue to do that. Basically, the eggs begin to curdle up. So I'm just gonna wait. And sometimes it's all about how hot the pan is too. And over here, we have the ham. So I'm just gonna go ahead and turn the ham once again. Again, I don't want it to overcook the ham because the ham will get dry on you. Oh, that's a nice color for this ham. Nice color. So let's take a look at our eggs over here. Now you can start pulling the eggs back, pulling them back in the pan. And you can do that gently. And I don't like my eggs to be hard, so I'm actually going to turn the fire off because they're going to continue to cook. So it's no longer on. They're going to be soft. So here's my scrambled eggs. So I have scrambled eggs, I have the grits in the pot, I have the ham. So I'm going to serve everything up in just a moment so you can see what your country style breakfast will look like on a plate. Here's the final product. Here I have the ham steak country fried on top of the stove. I first let it steam and then I let it pan fry along with my creamy grits with a tab of butter and black pepper. And I have my scrambled eggs. Again, the grits is nice and smooth. I'm just gonna bring it closer to the camera, and it's thick. There are no lumps. So if you need to add more salt or pepper, add it to your taste and to your likings. And again, if you like what you see, thank you once again for visiting Teresa's Kitchen.